Okay, we're recording. Cool beans. Make sure everyone's got their hats right, their headphones or hair, everything's good? We're good? Okay. Welcome students to a little meeting with me and four of my old colleagues who I miss very much from Syracuse. Unlike myself, after they finished their masters, they went on to their PhD programs, and now they are just a few steps away from being PhD doctorates of their areas, experts of their field. So I thought it'd be fun to have a little meeting and have them tell you about what they do, who they are, where they're from. Let's just go counterclockwise, and we'll start up next to me with Nick LaRusso. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from, Nick?
Hi, everyone. Like Luke said, my name is Nick LaRusso. I am from upstate New York, Syracuse, New York. I am a PhD candidate in environmental engineering, specifically biogeochemistry, which is a really long mouthful of a word that means I just study the interaction of like living things, soil, and water, and I use chemistry to do that.
Okay, so we got a long title. So thanks for boiling that down for us. What are you working on right now? Like, what is your research right now?
So I study a lot of stream water and soil water up in the mountains of New Hampshire and up in the mountains of New York. A lot of our drinking water comes from watersheds like these. Like especially in New York City, your drinking water comes from the Catskill region. I don't do any work there, but I have a lot of colleagues and other professors in the program who do work in that region. These watersheds are the source of this drinking water. So I use chemistry to look at the water quality and make sure that it's.
What kind of things, when you look at that water quality, what kind of things are you doing and how do you do it? In layman's terms.
Man, so we use like just a bunch of different really technical instruments to figure out the concentrations of things like nitrogen and carbon. Hopefully, I think you guys have maybe covered that, nitrogen and carbon, to see how they change throughout over the years and seasonally, and see how that impacts downstream.
What's the main driving factor that's changing the chemistry of the water in the ground upstate?
So in the Northeast, a lot of it's the recovery from acid rain. For decades, coal power plants out in the Midwest released emissions and carried these emissions across to our region in the Northeast. And there were sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides that, when mixed with moisture in the atmosphere, became acidic and dropped on the land in rain. And that really impacted and hurt a lot of the trees and the soils in the region. But since the 70s and since regulation like the Clean Air Act, these forests have been recovering. But because of that, we're seeing a major influx of carbon into water, and that has a lot of could have impacts on how we treat the water before we drink it. It can kind of gum up the system in a way, or it can mix with other treatment chemicals that we use to then release possible other new forms of chemicals that could hurt us before we drink it. So figuring out.
Sorry, that sounded like a long form way of saying like you check out the soil chemistry and what's going on in the ground, and then you can use that to predict how the ecosystems will change, how our drinking water will change, and the long-term effects of that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And that sounds awesome. And we can thank your work on coal plants, and our next person can also thank her work on coal plants. Nuzhath, you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on?
Yes, definitely. Hi, everyone. So my name is Nuzhath. I am from Bangladesh. I did my undergrad in Bangladesh. I came here to do my master's in 2014. Then I finished my master's in 3 years. Then I enrolled into PhD program in Syracuse University. And I did my master's in civil engineering, and also my PhD I'm doing in civil engineering. Now I am a PhD candidate.
Can you just tell us real quick what civil engineering is?
So civil engineering is the part where you do work on the building. It's actually a combination of structure, environment, traffic, everything. You are living in a building, inside the building, that's a part of your civil engineering. You are driving on the road, that's the road, that is a part of civil engineering. Your surrounding environment, that's a part of civil engineering. So everything, all the surrounding environment, everything, it is a part of civil engineering.
Awesome. And you said in there with structures, you said something about dams. So Nick was studying water quality, and we use dams to hold big reservoirs of water that we draw our drinking water from. So you were studying something about dams. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. I'm basically studying about the fly ash. So fly ash is like a dusty material. It's like a very, very dusty and very fine particles that contains a lot of heavy metals. Heavy metals means lead, sulfur, silica. Those are like very, very, very dangerous materials that you cannot drink them, or if that contaminates the groundwater, then it's very, very dangerous for human. So there are several dams in the United States and also around the world, in many parts of South America and also some parts in Asia, that the dams are built with this type of fine particles that have very heavy metals. And at several years, in several times, it was found that when these dams are failed, they release lots of heavy metals that washed away the houses. Then like several people died when they just failed, and it's like a flood, and also they contaminate the groundwater. I'm trying to study how to stop this flow, or how to stop this failure, and what are the major properties of these fine particles that causes this failure of the dam.
So let me try to recap, because this is new for me. So dams, big piles of dirt that hold back lots of water and make artificial lakes. It's really cheap to take the fly ash, the recycled burnt coal, and use that to build your dam, to build the base of your dam. But the issue is that if the dam floods, or if it breaks because of rain or some kind of other failure or an earthquake, then all of this water and fly ash with dangerous heavy metals gets washed out. And the danger is the neighborhoods, communities being wiped out from the flood, but then also the lasting damage of the heavy metals to the soil.
Right.
Okay. That's pretty heavy stuff to be working with.
But yeah, but that's actually really interesting to learn about these materials, because so first of all, these materials are not same. Like you might have all same fine materials, but they do not show same properties. So basically they are showing different chemical properties, and also different physical properties. So it's interesting to work with these materials.
So not all fly ash from different like coal plants all behaves the same. It all acts different.
Yeah, so they are all different materials.
Wow, so you have a lot of things to consider in your work. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's move on. Thank you, Engda, for being patient. Last but not least, let's hear what you got to say. Introduce yourself.
All right. How's everyone doing? My name is Engda, and I'm from Ethiopia. I'm from the capital. It's called Addis Ababa. And I moved here to upstate New York, Syracuse, to do my master's in 2014, where I met, should I call you Luke or Mr. Andrews?
Mr. Andrews, please.
Mr. Andrews. And then Nuzhath and Nick, who I've had the pleasure of getting to know. What I do, I study or I do research with Geofoam. I'm not sure if Mr. Andrews has told you guys about Geofoam before, but to give you a brief insight of what Geofoam is and where we use it. If you think about New York City, if you think about the downtown of New York City, you see skyscrapers, you see a lot of tall buildings. But then if you think about Harlem, upper Manhattan, you see a lot of short buildings up there. And the reason behind this is that lower Manhattan has a very strong soil. where these buildings can stand on, and then upper Manhattan has a weaker soil where these buildings are again sitting. So if you ask yourselves what would happen if you have a really weak soil or really bad, you can't even drive on it, you can't even stand on it, what happens? So that's where geofoam comes in. Geofoam is 100 times lighter than soil, but it's as strong as soil. So what we do is we take out the weak soil. If we wanted to build on a weak soil, we take out the weak soil, we put in large blocks of geofoam or styrofoam, and then we build on it. And what I do is really, I'm working on characterizing the strength of a geofoam block.
So geofoam is relatively new in like human history. We haven't really been building with geofoam for that long. So you're basically designing or you're writing the rules of how it can be used safely.
Exactly. And we're helping, state DOTs, federal highways.
DOT?
Huh?
What's the DOT?
It's a Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation.
New York State DOT. Yeah. So yeah, we're working with these organizations to, help them figure out how strong these materials are and, decide on a design number. When we use geofoam, we can say, oh, it can carry up to, this tall building or this many cars or, this large truck. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm looking at.
So I just want to go back after we've talked about what you guys are studying on, and this time we're going to go in reverse order. I'm going to let Engda go first. Mm-hmm. What do you get to do on a daily basis? Like, what tools are you working with? Like, are you writing papers, or are you crunching numbers and doing math? Are you working in a lab? Are you doing research online? Just give us a breakdown of what you do.
Okay. So morning, I get my morning coffee. I walk to campus. I go to my lab. In my lab, I have a lot of different sensors. And if you remember, we had that non-destructive testing where we send in P waves, these sound waves across geofoam blocks to really measure the speed of these waves and then use that to see how strong the material is. And now we have,
I said a lot of math going on in there.
A lot of math, yeah. So once you collect your data, you go to your computer, you go to your spreadsheets, you do calculations.
I just got them started working on Google Sheets yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Spreadsheets, baby, spreadsheets.
Yeah, spreadsheets is life. Yeah, and we have much more sensors now where I'm using fiber optic sensors now. These sensors are really small, you can't even see them, but you glue them to your material. In this case, I'm using geofoam, so I'm gluing it to geofoam, and I can pick up small deflections, really small deflections, and I would know how much of a load I'm putting on, to get those kind of deflections.
How small are we talking? We're talking 1/100 of an inch, 1,000th of an inch?
I want to say 100th.
100th of an inch? Okay, so incredibly fine measurements.
Incredibly fine, yep.
That's cool. The lab has stepped up since I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got a new MTS machine now. I can load up to, 50,000 pounds?
50,000 pounds. For those
no, newtons, sorry, 50,000 newtons.
Okay, for those of you that don't know, the machines that Engda is talking about is a big frame that you can put something in and then crush it to see how strong it is. So it's a really fancy name for a crushing machine. Reverse order, Nuzhath, what are you doing on a daily basis to get your data and examine your dams, and what are you doing?
So definitely when I wake up, same as Engda, I will have my tea, some breakfast someday, and then I go to school. We have developed some small setups. It's very simple, small test setup to see how this material behave. So it's like a jar that has both ends open, and we put some soil there, some water there, and we keep it for settlement for a few days. And then we just take it up, just lift it up and see how much it flows. Then there are some calculation for that, how much it flows, then how much is the volume change, or how much is the area change. along with that, we are using also we actually purchased just recently a very fancy.
Hold up. Before you go further, I just want to recap. It sounds like what you're doing with the jars of soil is you're doing a bunch of because you said earlier that all these different fly ashes act differently. So you're doing a bunch of different setups with different types of fly ash to see how different ones act.
Yes, right. So far I have
sample size with these small samples, you can then scale up and predict how a dam is going to act.
Yes, right. So far I have actually 6 different types of samples, so 6 different types of fly ash, and I also have some natural soil, some rock, flour, rock dust, and some also some crushed sand or crushed rock. So far I have also 10 to 12 different materials, and for them I have 12 test setups. So I do all of them at a time, and I can see and compare how it behaves.
That's really interesting. Okay, so you can do a bunch of things side by side. So you see all these different materials behaving differently next to each other, and you can draw conclusions about them.
Right.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah. And so I was talking about that we recently purchased a rheometer. So that rheometer is going to tell us how the viscosity changes.
Oh, so, viscosity, big word.
Yeah, so definitely if you want to see how the viscosity change just in a simple word, what is viscosity, that you can compare just water and a toothpaste. You can see, so when you press the toothpaste, it's like a solid, but still it's not a solid, but it takes some time to come out. But if you just pour some water, so the water will definitely come out.
So water has a low viscosity, toothpaste.
Yes, right. Okay. Yes, definitely. So we are trying to see when we apply some force on a soil material, how much the viscosity changes, and that change, so we can measure it in the rheometer.
So I imagine that if you have a really stiff soil, but then when you push on it and its viscosity changes, so it becomes more fluid, you don't want it to suddenly become fluid.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Let's cycle up to Nick. What do we got, Nick? What is your, this is your time to unload and just talk about all your technological stuff. You're muted.
Well, it starts with coffee.
Okay.
And then you, as with everyone else, or tea, but mostly coffee. And then you go to the lab. And so there's 2 main techniques that I do. One is called inductively coupled plasma mass spectroscopy. Basically, I take argon and heat it into a plasma that's like 55 to 6,000 degrees, 5,500 to 6,000 degrees Kelvin. So basically the surface of the sun. And then I use radio waves to form that plasma into a cone. And I shoot my water sample through that plasma, and it vaporizes everything into their individual atoms. And I can then, there's a detector that can detect those atoms and tell us how much like calcium is in the water, how much lead is in the drinking water, things like that, down to a very, very small amount.
So I think Nick wins the cool toy in the lab award.
I basically create a little mini sun that we vaporize water inside of.
That's what allows you to get those really, really fine readings of what's in the soils, because you separate it out literally into atoms.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. And then giant rotating magnets, as the rest of the sample that's been vaporized goes through these giant rotating magnets, they get separated according to their mass of the atom and the charge before they hit the detector, and then the detector can tell us what it is.
Atom mass and charge. That's something we're going to be talking about very shortly, chemistry people.
I have a question. I have a question for Nick.
Yeah.
So how big of a sample can you put in that?
It's not a lot. I think it goes through multiple phases, but we maybe use 3 milliliters of water altogether between sending some through, washing the system, and then once the detector is open and we're ready to accept these different atoms, then it takes like another milliliter. But yeah, it's about 3 milliliters per. A lot of it just ends up going down into
Yeah.
the waste. The actual amount that gets vaporized is very, very small.
So to put that, guys, in perspective, 3 milliliters of water. So he's creating a tiny little sun that he's throwing these samples of water through. 3 milliliters of water. There's 220 milliliters of water in a soda bottle. So that's a very, very small amount of liquid that we're working with at a time.
Right.
Engda, you jumped right on what I was going to say next, which was, do you guys have any questions for each other on each other's research right now? Word. Okay.
It is.
That's fine. No, you guys did.
It's all good.
No, I just.
No, you guys did an amazing job of like explaining everything thoroughly and talking about what you do. So like I wish I had more questions myself, but you guys do a really good job. Hopefully my students will have questions, and maybe I can pass those on to you and get some responses back.
Definitely.
So as we wrap this up, I don't want to keep you guys any longer, but I would like just like a closing statement, just to say, like, why are you a scientist? If you had to explain to someone in 1 or 2 sentences, why are you a scientist?
And I just like knowing how things work. Like I like knowing how things are connected, and I found that chemistry is what connects us to the world around us. And that's why, they're like all like little Legos. I loved playing with Legos as a kid, and atoms and molecules are like the building blocks of life. So
Great answer, my guy. Great answer. Nuzhath.
That's a very difficult question, actually. But as far as I remember, when I started working with soil during my undergrad, I did not like this topic at all. But the more I'm working with soil, I think I'm getting more and more interest, because everything is new, and sometimes I do not find any answer anywhere. Or maybe sometimes I'm the first one that I'm trying to create something. So that actually fascinates me. Maybe that's why I'm really interested in this topic.
That's awesome. You hear that? We got a pioneer in the meeting right now.
No one's doing the very best.
Literally no one in the world is studying what Nuzhath is studying. She's the first one to do what she does. Big ups for that. Engda.
Simply put, I want to make a difference. I want to add something to the community. I want to give something back. So that's why.
Yeah, also a good answer. You guys, 3 really solid answers. I hope we don't spend this long apart again. I really missed you guys through quarantine. I've missed you since I left Syracuse.
Same here.
Same, man.
I couldn't ask for 3 better people to jump on a Zoom call with me and talk about science so I can show my kids how cool scientists can be. I thank you very much.
Yep.
Welcome. Anytime, bud.
Anytime. You know where to find us.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.